And that's the time for your questions. So I'm sure you can send the microphone, so whoever wants to ask something is welcome to ask. So let me ask the first question. How important, because from most of your speeches I understood that the artistic research is important and crucial part of your work. So how do you combine artistic work with the teaching, and how much each other influence, how much the research influence your teaching practice and vice versa? Could you say that?
Are you asking how pedagogy is informed by research? Well, it's different for different artists who come in to visit us. They bring different priorities in that, but I would say that one thing that's in common is that willingness to go into an unknown, so that to be process-oriented, to not already know what it's going to look like before they do it, and try to. It's not about getting the students to kind of mimetically show that they learn what the artist brought, but actually together seeking through. Also, I think particularly because the acting and sonography students are often working together beyond their traditional roles, if you could say that. There's already for them in workshops where they're combined a question of what does the work want of me, what is my agency in this room, what is the material asking, and so there's a requirement to take risk. So that brings, I think, quite an important value to the work, the emphasis on artistic research. Also, the idea that the work is not only for itself. It's not art about art for arts, for the art, and it's not a careerist art mentality, but actually to understand that, and also I wouldn't even say kind of a humanist project either, but rather to through an artistic research process, open up the possibility of other kinds of relationships and dwellings and radicalities that we can't find in repeating practices that we have known. I don't know if that's the answer.
I think that in Carnegie Mellon, you can find a lot of the structure of what we do inside that one class, which is that we're introducing a sort of known field and a known set of tools, and then sort of asking the groups, because different classes have different populations inside them, to either engage with those or to break them or deny them. And then from there, the students, my students, the fellows, at the end of each year, we decide together what is the next year. So what is the research for next year? So it sort of just scaffolds. And then the sort of play space, or that open space for creation, complicates as the years go by and the population also changes.
I think the artistic research is important for our program, and we provoke the students to bring as much data as possible in the beginning of each process. So the major part of the process would be this collection of data and some kind of a research around them. And sometimes the output could be only uncovering or describing the research itself. That might be the major result sometimes.
And also, this is something what I mentioned before, but I think that quite important thing is that we are trying to somehow extend this kind of theatrical experiences and to give opportunity to be in touch with some other media, for example, with radio art on one hand, with Super 8mm camera on the second hand. So it's something what is also quite helpful somehow to try to develop the theater with some other skills and tools. And partly this is also inspired by, let's say, our own artistic research or some of our experiences, because we are working in these fields like I don't know, experimental film, experimental music, or some radio art. So this is something what can somehow develop some new forms or new connections.
And do you think that this artistic research done at school influences your own artwork? You know, what do you learn from your students?
This is something quite interesting, but we experienced some situations that we were making some, let's say, free improvised sets, for example, with spoken word or with singing or some kind of collective voice. And that was something that we didn't control so much, and we were just interested in the result, what's gonna happen. So sometimes, like, the process is open on both sides, and we are trying also to find some new ways, but taken from the second, let's say, side of the border. So this is something that is quite important to also learn ourselves somehow from the practices made by students, for example.
I feel like I'm influenced very much by this research that we do at the school, and I actually think it's like only one part of my work. I work with my own company, and we do research, this and that, and then I go here to the academy and like keep on researching maybe similar things and topics, because it's from my side it's a lot about passion. I'm very curious about certain topics, so I keep researching on them here with students. Sometimes I'm even envious because my students are faster and they sometimes develop some very new and interesting results that I was not able to do with my own company or myself, and well, that makes me envious, but it makes me happy at the same time.
I, not only myself, but also I'd say like many of us at the Academy, that the projects that we do are so dependent upon the dialogue with our students, that we are really learning with them. And I would say that I learned a lot from a project that Serge has done called Hoya, which maybe you could talk about. I think that's actually relevant. That there's this research that's done on an island in the Oslo Fjord. There's a lot of back history to that, but the students are really, through making performative memorials, are really working with this kind of immateriality of memory in the site, really discovering strategies for listening with objects, material, and then sort of illuminating on that with what's already there, sort of what you call reveal by hiding. And I've learned a lot watching that the students, both the actors and the scenographers, have the capacity to respond through performance beyond what their traditional disciplines tell them they can do. So they're suddenly working with what someone might call visual art. And so you begin to understand that these things don't matter when it comes to dealing with place, the spirit of place, agency of that relationship. So I learned a lot about that in reference to my own writing, I would say, like research.
So, anybody has any more questions, please?
I have a sort of two-part question for Katie. The first part's easy, which is you clarified what you meant by post-capitalism, but what does post-internet mean? Don't answer yet. And part two is I'm interested in the relationship between the technology that you're exploring with your fellows and the criticality around that technology. As you know, it's a major issue in a lot of these technically oriented universities to teach ethics alongside engineering, alongside technological development that they're cultivating. What are your strategies for developing conversations around the technology you're investigating in your artistic research?
Okay, so to answer the first one, post-internet is just in the crisis of the internet. It's not, because it means that the internet is everywhere and we're living in that crisis. And I think we all can agree we're living in that crisis. In America we have Trump, and we're still trying to dig through that and find out how the internet was involved in that, which it was. I would say that the sort of confrontation with ethics and tech is both performed and then also research. So what I mean by performed is, I think in a lot of the work we try and reify things that are digital, so we try and embody them and feel what that's like. And then when it comes to the more specific social things, it's on readings. So we do a lot of readings about, like for instance, I was talking about, well, what's wrong with the world and why can't we figure out how to talk everyone into being a lot nicer, right? Why are the fascist regimes sort of controlling the story? And you can actually look at a series of books that talks about how the internet separates us emotionally, how then we try and connect on the internet by likes, which is embedded inside of an economy of attention. And we find out that we can't have any emotions on the internet unless they're extreme. So we have to have someone die and post about it, and then we get lots of likes. Or we have to scream, and then we get lots of likes. It's why trolling works. It's why Trump, no matter what he says, he has control of the economy of attention. Then part of that economy is algorithms. And algorithms don't care whether it's a bad thing you're writing about or a good thing you're writing about. They just care that it has clicks, right? So, I mean, that's a series of free books that we can talk about sort of how that works.
And do you talk about that just with the students or with the university at large? Sorry.
Just with the students. I don't really have a platform to talk about with the rest of the university. The students do some, and also I'm for tenure this year, so it'll change after this year. But the students do a lot of collaborating across campus, and that does get talked about. I have a queer relationship to that institution, and that I am thinking about how I embed, infect, and multiply ideas, right? Or at least agitations. And I don't have to do it. My students who are interested in that work will do it also. And then the whole school gets into it. Lots of meetings.
Anybody else?
I just grabbed the mic, I'm not sure what the question is. It seems to me that all three talks were a lot about really well-protected spaces with incredibly porous membranes. So there was a lot of conversation about being in connection with the world, but, and Harmony, you especially talked about needing to protect the space in which the work is taking place. And so I guess I'd be interested to hear everybody's, I guess in a sense that's a laboratory, that's one understanding of a laboratory. So I'd be really interested to hear everybody's thoughts on that. But the thing that the question that I don't really know what the question is that Ken, you mentioned, I'm always drawn to things that are put forward as if we're all going to agree with them. And you said reality is broken. And I'd really like to hear what everybody on the panel thinks about this. Well, there's a two, yeah, that's why I said yes. So I'm not even sure if the second one is. There are two different reasons I say yes. But somehow, what I didn't get far enough into thinking was that I think they're related, but I'm not sure.
I'll say one because I'm the one who was like throwing that out there. I would say that protected spaces and the things that I try and work against inside the institution is that it's hermetic. So oftentimes labs are hermetic. They're closed by plastic and people wear garments. And I also think that given the system of our communications and post-capitalism, the separateness and the need to be outrageous and to have extreme feelings puts us in these hermetic spaces of continuous self-reflection in others.
I have a really specific idea of what I mean about protection, or like, because I really feel that there's, because there's an increasing demand for excellence and this word of institutions of excellence, and I think someone mentioned learning outcomes today, these words that come up, which are actually creeping in on many aspects of process, but also on exactly this idea of spirit of place that I'm really concerned about, which is so what I mean by protecting is to actually somehow through at least in my role as a leader and as a programmer of the education and as a tutor, to preserve a space that like teaching can't access, that I'm not influencing, and that the school can't touch. And I think about that in terms of the body, like the training of an actor, to actually to make it possible for the body to escape the training, make it possible for us to actually do as little as possible in the 3 years if there, except for hold the space. And there's a lot of acupuncture, like artistic acupuncture, but it's very different than a kind of like sculpting of an actor. And this idea that then we need to sort of see that they were sculpted and they demonstrate, okay, our teaching got through, yes, it's working. And to really, that's a way that you have to fight even amongst like fantastically open-minded colleagues who have all the best intentions, but to still preserve that space so that it's protected actually from fear. So it's not about hometics, and part of the way to do that is through projects that get people out, that keep them connected to the world, and that the world comes in. And it's not only the institution for itself. I think it's crucial.
Talking about protection, I was thinking what to say. Maybe we try a little bit to protect our students from the method by giving them lots of inputs which are very different from each other, and in which we create a kind of system with those inputs coming into this system, which has no method yet, or which will never have a method, and then the output will be something which we call theater. But we try not to put very much theatrical inputs in the beginning, so the system will create it somehow by itself. So we try to develop the system together with the students, so we don't know how it works yet or how it will work, but we strongly hope that it will work. It will work with the rules that the students will bring, not that we would tell them immediately that this is how we do it and this is how it works, because we certainly have some kind of methods on our own, but these are our methods, and students might need maybe a little bit different methods for their own work. I don't know if that was an answer for their questions, but
there's such a big task of, let's say, or from my perspective, this task is the responsibility of, let's say, teacher or pedagogue, how to give feedback to the students. And I think that, for example, we are trying to get the smallest feedback as possible, because sometimes, for example, when I was student, that sometimes it happened that some of the teachers showed me how to, for example, make this performance, showed me how to repair some mistakes which I made in my own pieces. And there was something what completely blocked me, for example, during the rehearsal process, etc., etc. So sometimes we are self-protective, somehow to be not so much, so much offensive, or not giving so much, critical inputs to the students. It's better to somehow to show them as much possibilities which are somehow useful, but not just to select that this is the right one or this method is really helpful, because there is still potential to find new methods or to bring something completely different by an accident, etc., etc.
Maybe that's also why we like to work a lot with randomness, or a certain system which use divination, for instance, or also algorithms, that these are kind of neutral formulas, and they are like, there is the same approach from us or from our students when working with the algorithms or with the divination systems. It gives the neutral kind of comment, and which we can discuss like the both sides with the same position, or how to say.
So, last question is, please.
I think it's interesting, at least for me, when you talk, or which is a concern of all our work, the creation of those protected spaces, but the way you create these protected spaces for all of you is very different, and this, I think, must have an impact on how you share finally your results. Because there is a society, a public, where the students are prepared for, or where our work of theater-driven persons, is this moment of the show, or of the performance, or of whatever event it might be. And how does this relate to the way of protection you hold them in? That would be the question.
I'm actually not for protection. I'm really interested in the MFA program in Iceland. I want to sit in a tub and I want someone just to randomly come and sit with it in me and we can talk about stuff. And I would want that for my students. They want that. They're desperate to get out of the school and into the city of Pittsburgh. And nationally too. So it isn't something I strive for. I actually try and break it as much as possible. But it is, Carnegie Mellon University is sealed.
Yeah, and I think it's really, I really want to emphasize that what I mean is protection from us. I think, I'm not sure if that was clear. I mean protection from training and from the institution, from that whole apparatus, which we've been talking about for 2 days. You know, that's what I mean by protection, not protection from the world so that they can like live in an artistic bubble. That is exactly what we're not trying to do. And I think the result of that is that because so many, in our context, so many, like I mentioned, are coming from abroad and making work collectively to make independent projects together. And we have a lot of students who go on to get funding and tour with these collective works, and go on to live in a kind of extended community of collectives making collective work in different institutions or disciplines. But I think that that moment of you said a performance or coming to an audience, this is not something that's like forgotten and then suddenly shows up. I mean, we're really beginning with this question of what's happening in a room, what is our relationship to the world, and the work is emerging in that dialogue and changing maybe up until the day of the performance in some groups because of that dialogue. And so that's exactly where the guy walking into the tub becomes the piece. And so how can you, through a process, make sure that that's possible? Because you haven't scripted your whole artistic vision as a kind of ego bubble, but you're just maintaining the possibility for unknown dialogues to unfold with places or with materials, with things. And yeah, just really important that on the record is not about a kind of privilege bubble, although it is a privilege to have such an opportunity at the same time. It is a privilege bubble, of course.
That's exactly what we would say. So, maybe I can add that maybe that protection is sometimes means like being protected from too much protection from our side. So before the performance actually happens, then we are not trying to fix all the bugs, like to prevent all the possible problems, because that would be like the bringing the perfection, or our view of perfection there in the game. So we rather let them do it their way and face their own problems. So that's this kind of protection.
That are okay, so necessity is also, even though you have a question, I'm asking because, so yeah, sure. So there should